This is gonna take crackerjack timing, Wang.
Total concentration. You ready, Jack?
I was born ready.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's that time of the week where we're going to talk about everything X-Men. With me, as always, is X-Men historian and comics aficionados OG Doc. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good this morning. Yourself?
I'm doing pretty excellent. You ready to talk about some X-Men, your favorite characters in the universe?
Yes, I am.
All right, so only 2 new Dawn of X releases this week, but there's some X-Men news and notes we're going to cover as we enter 2020. First, incoming teased return of 2 Omega-level mutants, Legion and Mr. M. Turns out Mr. Sinister has access to DNA of many Omega-level mutants and is looking to add their DNA to his database. You know, are you excited to see Legion and Mr. M return in 2020?
You know what? A little bit, yeah. Especially Mr. M, because he doesn't have a huge history. He's not the most well-known of the, I guess, Omega level mutants. But we just had Legion come back, a year ago to do the stupid Age of X-Man event. And I want to see what they're doing with that, because last we saw, they were kind of in a merged body and then just kind of stuck in a pocket dimension. Considering the waste of time that was the last return of Legion, I'm hoping, I still have a bad taste in my mouth from that I hope that either it does something really, really cool and original, or they kind of wipe that from continuity.
Because we know Richard Franklin, he's a boy right now, but he's about to be introduced in the storyline with X-Men Fantastic Four, and his power set is almost unimaginable, correct?
Yeah, Franklin's powers are, off the charts. The same way with, a lot of the other, a lot of these other Omega level mutants, their powers are just entirely off the charts. And if they actually utilize them to their fullest extent, you always have to leave with powers like that, you always have to leave some sort of, I guess, there has to be stakes to them using them, or there has to be something that really prevents them. Like Legion has the problem of the multiple personality disorder. So he's never entirely in control because each of his personalities has different power sets. So if he ever gets his kind of fragmented personality reintegrated, he becomes just he's a walking problem solver.
So let's move on to the next topic. In January 29th, X-Men #5 sees writer Jonathan Hickman reunite with R.B. Silva following their very successful collaboration on Powers of 10. In a recent teaser image, X-23, Synch and Darwin assemble for a special mission. With this team's abilities, what do you think they're going to be doing in X-Men #5?
I'm really not sure, because that's an interesting mix that I never thought. Well, I mean, obviously because Synch has been gone for so long and Darwin was so minimally used. I don't know if I have no idea what in the hell, how their powers could work together to solve some problem, because I mean, Lara's powers are just her essentially her healing factor and her claws.
She's Wolverine.
Yeah, she's weaker Wolverine. And because she can get, have somebody like the Juggernaut break every bone in her body. So it'll just take her a little while to put herself back together. Whereas Wolverine, he can't. And Darwin is also, he adapts to survive. So that's interesting too. But Synch is where I'm a little confused on where they be going with that, because he essentially just kind of, Synch is kind of like Hope in a way, in that he kind of kind of copies powers from other people around him. So that's an interesting trio there, and I'm not sure what the hell they'd be doing with that.
Are you excited to see him elevated to, full-fledged X-Men moving forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's weird to see Synch back after all these years. I think he died in Generation X like 15, 20 years ago. So bringing him back is kind of interesting. I'm really curious what they're going to do with him. That's a weird, as I said, that's a weird trio, and I haven't the slightest clue how their powers would be able to work together for something like this, except for the fact that it's essentially maybe they're sending them on a suicide mission, and those are the only three that can, have a chance at survival.
Well, it doesn't matter if they survive, right? As long as they get the job done.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. Okay, so you have three, two mutants whose powers are to essentially survive, and one who can basically copy them so he can survive too. So, but I don't know if that really has any stakes in a world in a world where there's cloning,
resurrection.
Yeah, when you have the resurrection machine, I don't know if that has any stakes in that situation.
All right, so let's move on. Kind of from some of the stuff that we're going to be seeing in the future in 2020 to some creative team changes in 2020. There are a couple of changes to the March Dawn of X release as far as creative teams. Jonathan Hickman is no longer writing New Mutants #9. Ed Brisson has now moved up to the credited writer, and Joshua Cassera is no longer illustrating X-Force #8. Oscar Bozuldia, probably butchered that one.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said, yeah. I don't know how to pronounce his name either.
So he's taken over the art on X-Force #8. This is really starting to feel like the new normal, thanks to Marvel's rapid fire shipping of X-Men titles, doesn't it?
Yeah, and now I know that Hickman was never expected to stick around on on New Mutants permanently. He was only supposed to get it started. It still seems like two different books right now. The Ed Brisson written issues seem like a whole different book than the Jonathan Hickman written issues. And so it's not surprising to see him leave. We knew it was going to happen.
Do we think he's leaving, or do we think they're changing the order in which they're releasing them?
Yeah, you know what? That could be.
It's the latter.
You know what? It could be because,
maybe one of the artists is falling behind. So like, well, this one's further along. We'll just release this because the order doesn't matter.
Yeah, especially since there's like two different, because since it is essentially two different story arcs going on in New Mutants. Now, the X-Force art change is interesting. I really like Oscar's art. I believe he was the artist on Mr. and Mrs. X, and I like that style. I don't know if it fits necessarily for X-Force, though, especially with the way that Ben Percy's writing that as a much more gritty Black Ops. That's a very, very superhero style art that I think would work really good on a book like, the main X-Men book, or honestly, even the terrestrial story of New Mutants, or even Excalibur, it would work well on. But I'm not sure it works for for X-Force. I'm curious to see how it does work, though, because he's a very very kind of puffy, not puffy. I guess much more smooth line instead of like sharp and angular. And his is a more finished style with some more soft lines, whereas Joshua Cassera is much more of a hard lines, gritty. His stuff feels right for an X-Force book. So unless they're doing a more superhero-y style X-Force on those issues. I'm curious to see how that's going to work.
All right, Doc. So there were two X-Men comics released this week. You know, X-Men number 4, Marauders number 5. Which one left a bigger impression on you this week?
I enjoyed X-Men 4. It finally felt like a continuation of House of X, Powers of X. Mm-hmm. The only problem that I had with it was it didn't really tell me anything new. Yep. It was a great kind of if you were reading, if you came into the Hickman relaunch and you didn't read X-Men, or if you didn't read Powers of X, House of X, it's a great kind of primer. It would have been it kind of felt like it would have been a good first issue. Because it's almost a recap of kind of the, restating what the stakes are for the mutants, restating where the where all the tensions are, restating the new kind of like the new world order that they had established, or the way they had thrown the whole world into a little bit of upheaval with the establishment of Krakoa. But it didn't tell me anything new. It was.
Yeah, I rated it. I really enjoyed the comic. So people were like, why would you rate the plot at 3.5? It's like, there's not a lot of plot there. There's really not a lot of progression, but the characterization in this comic is off the charts. It's like a 5 out of 5. Just with the characterization and dialogue is riveting. It's a tension-filled conversation, which is hard to do in comics.
Yeah, there really wasn't. They didn't. I mean, it would have been great if he would have given me even like a little bit of new information. Hey
we
guys,
sort of learned Morgan's the personal security for the autumn.
Yeah, I mean, okay, but we kind of already expected that. I mean, okay, it could have been Wolverine, or it could have been, one of the other captains. But all the rest of them are busy in another book. So Gorgon is the one that's kind of left to do that. So that makes sense as kind of like the leader of, the head of personal security for any diplomat, almost like the head of their secret service. Mm-hmm. And that's interesting, but it wasn't really any new information. It was just kind of and here's what we're doing with him. It didn't give me any new plot information. We learned that, some of the world is open to everything. Some of the world is still skeptical, and that the Americans are kind of running, assassination attempts against the heads of the Quiet Council. Okay, we kind of already knew that. They didn't take credit for it, but they had 2 strike teams, and again they hid the action. That's what I mean. They showed a little bit more of it than they did in the last couple of issues, but they still hid a lot of the action. Show me the action.
All right, Doc. So I think we've recapped a lot of the new news that's coming about X-Men. We'll be back next week for This Week in X-Men. We'll be talking some X-Force. I believe New Mutants comes out, as well as, I believe, Fallen Angels. So that should be fun. I'll talk to you later, my friend.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.